Welcome to Charter's Local Edition, coming to you from the Capitol in Helena, Montana, in preparation for and anticipation of the 2015 Montana Legislature. I'm Mark Staples, I'm your host. We had an exciting morning here in the Capitol. The caucuses met of both parties and elected their leaders for the 2015 session. And our guest for this segment is the just moments ago elected Senate Minority Whip, Robyn Driscoll, Senate District 26, Billings. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your session just got a lot more interesting.
It sure did.
And before, I'm going to have you eventually tell me what a whip does.
Okay.
But right now, I want you to tell our viewing audience a little about yourself.
Okay.
How did you get personal background, professional background, and then how you got into politics?
All right. I grew up in Billings, born and raised, and my father was from Butte, Montana, and he worked out at Conoco Refinery and was really, really strong union person. And so as involved in the union as he was, he also was very involved in politics. And so he was a precinct committee man. He never actually ran for office himself, but he would take me anytime that he took people to vote or when he went and registered people to vote. And so I grew up kind of just doing it with him all the time. DNA. Exactly. And in raising my own daughter, she was knocking doors for Democrats at age 6. So it's kind of in her DNA as well, but it's always been an interest of mine.
And you served first in the House of Representatives.
I did. I termed out of the House of Representatives in 2011.
And you're in the middle of your first term in the Senate.
Yes.
Which is a 4-year term, so you're 2 years into it.
Yes.
And that's pretty quick to be the second in command in the leadership of the Democratic Party in the Senate. What does a whip do?
Well,
are you supposed to whip people into shape? Is
that's
that what it is?
That's actually where the term comes from. Yes, is you try and keep your caucus together, and
the caucus is your party's.
Yes, all 21 of us.
The ensemble of your party.
Yes, yeah. in the Senate, and so there are 21 of us
versus 29 Republicans.
Right.
Okay.
And there are 2 whips and 1 minority leader. But so the whip's job is, yes, to try and keep the caucus together, especially on key votes. Democrats kind of tend to go where they want to go, and we don't really.
They think their constituents want them to go.
Yes, we don't. We try not to pin people down and hold them to votes unless it's something that we feel is very, very important that we would like to see passed.
Well, let's focus on what you. Not that I'm going to hold you to say. Remember,
sure.
You said this was important, so we're looking for a caucus position on this. But what are so you're going to be in leadership, which is a whole new deal for you. What are the goals of the caucus?
Well, this session we have some we would really like to see pre-K early edge, which is the governor's plan to put 4-year-olds in like Head Start type programs or in the public arena, public schools. Studies have shown that kids that have gone through Head Start or that have had preschool before they actually enter into elementary just fare so much better. Their social skills are better, their academic skills are better.
I just had the the newly elected Senate president on the program, and she said her understanding was, and I didn't understand this, was that was to be paid for via a grant. I thought it was to be paid for via an appropriation that the legislature would have to approve. Are you clear on where the funding for that program would come from?
I think I was thinking that it's an appropriation that is given out in grants to local communities who apply for them. Now, this is not something that is mandatory. So communities can decide whether they want to take advantage of that. They can decide whether they want to apply for a grant or not. If they are perfectly, happy not offering pre-K, They're certainly not required to do that, but if they apply for the grant and are then I think that we will try and leave it up to local school boards or local communities to decide what it is they really want.
What about Medicaid expansion? An issue that got through one house, the Senate, and almost through the second house last time, only to run into a kind of a log jam procedurally and otherwise in the House. And have the votes changed on that, or is that going to run into the same log jam again? What are you optimistic that you can move that along this time, or is it something you want to do?
It is something that I want to do. When there are people out there that are suffering because they don't have insurance to cover their medical bills, or they're filing bankruptcy because they don't have insurance, yes, I definitely want to. That's one of our priorities, one of my priorities for sure this session. I think, from what my understanding is, people have had a working group over the interim, and maybe are coming up with a different plan than what was presented last session. I think that the votes will be there. I think that a good compromise is probably going to come out of this session. And within the last week, when everything kind of comes together and happens, I think that you will see some form of Medicaid expansion in Montana.
Well, speaking of which, when we asked you to fill out a questionnaire about what you wanted to talk about, one of your subjects was the harmful effects of partisanship. So, obviously, if you think you're going to be able to pull that together, you're hopeful that this session won't be characterized as a partisan battle?
I think that you're always hopeful about that.
Yeah.
When you look at Congress, and they just are never able to accomplish anything because of partisanship.
They're just stalemated.
There is, and I feel like we're fortunate in Montana that we haven't seen it get as bad as it has in Congress, but it's really hard, I think, when you are out there campaigning, running for election, and you know what groups are sending out just these horrible flyers against you. And so you win your election, you come up here, you know the groups and the people who are involved in those groups that were sending them out, and then you're supposed to just go and shake hands and say, let's work. And sometimes that's kind of hard because some of the mailings are so negative and personal that, it's
I don't
hard.
think people realize how difficult this is, not just physically as a job, but emotionally. For that and many other reasons. Compromise isn't a natural trait, and forgiveness is a tougher one still, particularly if somebody's really torn the hide off you with some of these ads.
Exactly.
And yet if you can't get there,
exactly,
then you're not going to be protected.
It is. It's yeah.
And you don't want to be thought of as a pushover.
Exactly. I know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you've run all these times.
Well, thank you.
It isn't
Thank
easy.
you. I appreciate it.
If you're a Helena legislator, it's a lot easier than if you're a Billings legislator.
That Billings Democratic legislator.
But it's just a long way to. It's a long way to come. It's a big chunk of your time. It's a big chunk of your life. Despite people might think otherwise. The pay is laughable.
Yeah.
You're deficit financing this to come and do the people's business that other people like me don't have to do. So I appreciate that, and I wish you the best of luck in your new role.
Thank you
and,
very much.
I hope it all works out for you to the best you can, and you get past those. That's tough. You will.
Obstacles. We will.
And I want to thank the viewing audience for tuning in. I know it isn't as the world turns, but it says how the state turns, and that's how it works. And these are the people that do it for us. And so, again, my appreciation to you, my congratulations to you,
Thank
and
you.
our thanks to you for tuning in to Charter's Local Edition.